Okay, this is Mishlei 10:10, and this is a wild and wacky one. All right. Koretz ayin yitain atzaves ve'evil sefasayim yilavet. Now, I know for a fact that at least one of you can translate the second half, and maybe you can tell me why I know for a fact.
We had Yilbeit in another pasuk. I'm not 100%.
Not only that, not only do we have Evil,
Isn't it the same as pasuk?
we had exactly the same phrase. Okay, I think it was it was chet, right? Pasuk 8. Let me just show you in the pasuk just so we can confirm this here. Yeah, in pasuk ches chacham lev yikach mitzvos ve'evil sefasayim yilavet. Right, so we had that exact phrase before. So the first half though is hard to translate. Okay, so let's do the second half first. Okay, do you remember how we translated evil sefasayim yilavet?
Did we say like the fool of the lips will be like confused?
A fool of the lips, yeah. So fool of the lips. Did we say be confused?
I have mixed up / confused.
Oh, so yeah, one of the Mepharshim said that. Yeah, maybe we had several ideas here. I don't really remember. I thought that the way we had it was will become weary or worn out.
And weak. A lot of translations.
Yeah, we had a lot. Yeah, okay, fine. So let's. I guess we'll add all of them. So let's say, what did you say?
Was I think mixed up, confused, wary, and weak.
Mixed up, and let's just say weary and mixed up because weak is close to weary. Okay, now koretz ayin yitain atzaves. Okay, anyone want to try taking that? That's also hard. So I'll take that as a no. Okay, so we gotta look at the Mepharshim here. Okay, so and the dictionary. So koretz ציון says inyan nidnud uremiza. So nidnud is like moving, and remiza is hinting. Okay, so what word in English comes to mind when you say to move and hint with the eye?
To wink.
Winking. There you go. Right. So if you look at these translations here, actually, we're not ready for that yet. So let me actually start with if I look on the Concord, the Torah translation. If you click koretz, you get. So literally means to nip or pinch, to pinch the eye. That sounds really painful. Okay, so that's not. I guess they don't say to wink. Okay. Oh yeah, wink maliciously. Okay, but so to wink. Okay, let's just say wink for now. One who winks with who winks with his eye. Yitain atzaves. So yitain is to give, but we might have to modify it. What is etzev or atzaves?
Does that mean like pain?
Yeah, pain, right? So we're gonna say here. Let me just show you the English, and we'll pick and choose as need be. So article says, "He who winks his eye instills trepidation." Now I don't know where they get trepidation from. Trepidation is like fear, but the foolish one's lips will become weary. He who winks with his eye brings sorrow, and the fool wearies his lips. Who winks his eye gives pain, and who speaks stupidly comes to grief. Okay, so we have here one who winks with his eye, and I like the word instills. Okay, instills. Actually, it might be. Actually, I'm not sure if I like instills. Instills or it might be conveys, because to give, I'm not sure. Gives. So pain, trepidation. I don't know where Arshua was getting that from. Sorrow, right? Like it says by Hashem after he saw that mankind being corrupt, he was sad to his heart, right? That's sorrow or sadness, and yeah, okay, fine. So we have that. Then Mitsu. Okay, we do Mitsu's David here, so we can delete that for now. Sadigon, I don't think he's doing anything different. But you tell me. He says Hakore be'eno, one who winks with his eye. I'll just type this out. One who winks with his eye, ose itzavon, produces itzavon, right? Sadness, pain, whatever. Okay, itzavon. V'ha'evil bisfasav. Oh, that's what he does. Gam hu yilavet. And the fool with his lips will also yilavet. Okay, so he's adding the word also. That seems to be his biggest contribution here. And he's also adding the word with his lips instead of fool of the lips. He's saying the fool with his lips will yilavet. Okay, and then the Targum, he says Deramez be'ainoihi, one who ramez. One. So here's my favorite translation here because I think it encompasses winks. One who signals with his eye. So winking has very specific like significance in our culture, and I don't want to like get it's very easy to like get caught up in a particular definition of winking, but signaling leaves your mind much more open to like different interpretations here. So one the Ramas be'ainohi yahev ke'eva will instill will give pain. Okay, so okay, one who signals with his eye will give pain. The salif besif vase misached, and one who is twisted in his lips will yilavate. Okay, again, I think that's just a straight translation of yilavate. Okay, so here we have confusion, right? And just to plant an image in everyone's head, I don't know how many of you out there are Arrested Development fans, but Lucille Bluth's ugly wink gif is the thing that I always think of when I read this pasuk. So if you want imagery to have in your mind, I don't think that's necessarily going to be relevant, but I had to bring it up. Okay, so that's what we have here, and I'm actually going to delete the 3 translations here because I think ours are good enough. Okay. So, what are our questions here? This is quite a platter of confusion.
Rabbi Shneimah?
Yes.
May I ask a methodology question now?
Yes, please do.
So now that half of the pasuk is exactly the same
Yeah.
to the pasuk we already learned, are we gonna just take what we said for that pasuk and just bring it down here and just work on the other half?
I was hoping someone asked that
I
question.
love that method because it's like it's lazy and it's nice.
Yeah, I know exactly. So there's learning Mishlei the easy way and learning Mishlei the hard way, and we look there. No shame in learning the easy way. Sometimes you just want like efficiency. Just get the ideas as whatever way you can, and you could do that. Well, we don't do that. Okay, we learn Mishlei the hard way, and I'm gonna bring call upon 2 authorities. One is Rabbi Moskowitz, and Rabbi Moskowitz again is my Mishlei Rebbe, and he would always say, approach each pasuk fresh, forget about what you learned last time, even if it was only 2 pasukim before, and because remember there's no order in Mishlei, and work it out based on this pasuk, and then after you work out this idea, you can compare the 2 and maybe modify one, or maybe universalize, or maybe see commonalities, but don't just plug in stuff from before. Okay. But here's what I was delighted to find. You know who else agrees with me? The Targum. Check this out. Okay. Targum. Where is he? Oh, Targum Kusuvim. Okay.
Can I just first logically argue that point for a second against Rabbi Moskowitz?
Yes.
Just for a second.
Yeah.
I'm actually a fan of independently working out this pasuk aside from the previous one.
Yeah.
However, it would be a little odd that Shlomo Melech would write something in the same exact phrase and make it mean something else. I don't know.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Ariel. Have you ever in your years upon this earth used a word in 2 ways?
Okay. Okay,
Right.
good point, but
Yeah.
still, I don't know.
Yeah, and
Uh,
and that is exactly what the Meiri makes this point a lot, is that you can't necessarily assume that all the words are used in the same way at all times, in the same way, in every case, because that's not how language works, and certainly not how chachamim work. The only time it would work like that is in areas of extreme technical jargon, and even there you see it doesn't actually work like that. Let's say like in halacha, where everything is defined technically, you still have terms that are used in different ways, like chazaka. Like chazaka is a presumed status, and it's also a method of kinyan. It's like there's so the answer is that that's how language works, is that there's such a thing as different usages.
right.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a logical argument in support of Rabbi Moskowitz here. So you were saying, what if what do you call it? How can't we just plug in what we did last time? Well, here's this. How do you know you learned it right last time?
Well, I was gonna say it's a good thing I forgot what we said last time.
Say it again.
I was gonna say it's a good thing I forgot what we said last time.
Okay, good. Yeah, right. But that's see, this is the problem with this is why, if you, for example, I mean, the one who talks about it the most in the best way is Rav Pesach. Rav Pesach Chait he's very, my Gemara Rebbe is very bottom up approach, in terms of it's very dangerous to walk in and just plug in preconceived ideas. And one of the reasons he's highlighted is that if you got an idea wrong and then you plug in that conclusion, you could end up building this entire edifice of falsehood based on based on the fact that you started in pasuk 8 and then went to pasuk 10 instead of starting with 10 and going to 8. So that's why it's important to work on each thing individually, and it'll take longer and it's harder, but it's more thorough. Here's my raya here's my raya from the Mitzudas. Okay, so check this out first of all, just to show you visually here, to make the stark contrast. So here you have, can I not highlight? I can't highlight. Okay, fine. Evil Sefasayim Yilavet, you see in pasuk 8, and Evil Sefasayim Yilavet in pasuk Yud. Check this out. In the Targum, V'sachla b'sif vase misached, and then in 10 he says V'salif b'sif vase misached. So he translates it differently. So in the first one he says a fool of the lips will be worn out, but in our pasuk he says one who is twisted of lips will be worn out. So he's a translator. So if even the translators are translating it differently, then certainly the interpreters have the right to interpret it differently.
All right, I concede.
Okay, good. No, but I'm thrilled that you asked the question, because it's an important question. Okay.
Is there
Rabbi,
anything to say
also-
about hello?
Yeah, let's go Esty first. Yeah.
just what would be the purpose of using the same words like that? Like, anything to say on that?
It's a good question. I would say it's the same. Okay, two possibilities. One is the same answer that I've given in the past about why he uses ambiguity in general. If he means two different things, like why can't he say it in a clearer way? And that's because he is trying to go for economy of ideas. So if you can convey multiple ideas through the same phrase, then it's a better formed parable. Again, like American parables go for simplicity, Eastern parables go for mysteriousness, the mystery, and like self-referential, truths. And then Shlomo parables go for the Swiss Army knife of the multiple tools in one shot. Second reason why he uses ambiguity is because, and this is related, but sometimes if he were only going for the external meaning, then he would use a clear phrase, but he's also trying to allude to the metaphorical meaning, and that's a different set of considerations. And then the third thing, what's the third thing? Oh, the third thing is that there might be a commonality in the two ideas that you can only arrive at through thinking about them on their own and arriving at each nuance on its own. In other words, like, let's say, for example, in the last pasuk, I hope this doesn't trigger a memory in Ariel. If it does, then hit him on the head or something like that.
Don't tell me. Don't tell me.
Yeah. No, but like last time we were saying that Eviel Sefasayim, it was being contrasted with the wise of heart will take mitzvos and the fool of the lips will be worn out. And so we were comparing the chacham doing with the fool talking. I think something like that, that was one of the approaches we had. So maybe we got an insight into the fact that the fool, I don't know, like thinks he's actually accomplishing something by talking, and is not actually like operating in reality. Okay, then we have our pasuk, and we're contrasting or comparing the fool of the lips with the one who winks his eye, and maybe even through thinking about the exact same words, we arrive at a new nuance from the context, and then maybe that will lead to something that is unified. But if we tried working on it just from thinking about that phrase in isolation, we wouldn't have arrived at that new idea. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. And because remember, all of this whole thing is that Shlomo's purpose is, one of the purposes of Mishlei is Lahavin Im Revina, is to teach you how to understand statements of understanding, and to teach you how to decode Divrei Chachamim V'Chidosam, to teach you how to decode the riddles of the Chachamim, and so like this is partially like what we have to figure out. And like, this is something that we were just talking about this. All of my shiurim run together. That this is a maneuver that Chachamim will use, is that they will. The Meir himself said this in Mishlei. Yeah, in Mishlei, he says by poor and rich, that sometimes in Mishlei and in other Chachamim they'll use the poor person as a mashal for the intellect and the rich person as a mashal for the desires. And sometimes they'll do the exact opposite. And the chacham has to figure out which one it means based on the context. So like that's part of the training is you not just plugging in, but like thinking about it afresh and like and working it out on the spot, even if it looks the same, So it is something to think about more. I'm just giving like the practical stuff.
So would you say that essentially this is the best phrase for this pasuk? It's also the best phrase for the other pasuk, and Shlomo Melech is going to use the best phrase, wherever it is.
I think that's a reasonable possibility. Yeah.
And then also, there's like a bonus idea: the fact that the same phrase is used in two different places can give you another layer of ideas.
Right. Yeah, that's good. I think that's a good summary. Okay, Rivki, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, so I was going to say something similar to what you were saying, but also now I was just thinking, do you think another possibility could be to give us like more insight into the character of the Yuvil? Because I know that we, in general, like we have like this Ksil, we have the Chacham, we have the Tzaddik. Like, do you think that that's a possibility?
About why he uses the same phrase?
Yeah, like meaning he's using the same phrase with the same quote unquote character, but with a different first half of a pasuk.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I agree that is. It's possible that it's going to give us other insight into the Yuvil. I guess what remains to be seen is, will we end up saying that the behavior described, the behavior ascribed to the Yuvil in our pasuk is the same as the behavior ascribed to the Yuvil in the previous pasuk, or is it a completely different set of behaviors?
Yeah, and then
if it was the same set of behaviors, then you'd be right. Then he's just giving us different angles, different snapshots. Yeah.
And I had a question, which is, I feel like obviously very basic. I feel like the setup of a Mishlei pasuk, I know we said we don't really know if it's always opposites, but this is like, I feel like the exact opposite of an opposite.
I was hoping someone would say that. Okay, so I found another methodology. So let's ask that as a question. Okay, what is the relationship between the two halves of this pasuk? Okay, now just to restate our derech, is my derech that I've had success with in approaching Mishlei is even the psukim that don't state opposites, there is an opposite to them, meaning like the average pasuk in Mishlei is good, bad, or wise, foolish, or righteous, wicked. But let's say you have a pasuk that is two things that are wicked. You have to kind of fill in the other half and say, well, what would the righteous half be, or what would the wise half be? So that method has worked very well for me. But I've also seen that sometimes the opposites can be within two good qualities or two bad qualities. So look who I found here. The I'm gonna skip this so we don't actually look at some of the Farshim here. The Rav Yosef Kimchi, the Radak's father, who I keep on forgetting to mention this. I think I keep on forgetting to mention this. If you ever see a commentary called Sefer Chuka, the Book of the Statute, that is Rav Yosef Kimchi on Mishlei. Just FYI. So he says like this. So he doesn't explain our pasuk, so you don't have to like shield your eyes. Koritz ayin yitin asavas ve'evos kol hapasuk zehu kulo ganus. The entire pasuk is all degradation. V'rov hapsukim shebakan, most psukim here, and I think by here he means in chapter 10, like the section from chapter 10 through chapter 25 or whatever, or through chapter 29. Machatziso shevach machatziso ganus. One half is praise, the other half is degradation. V'yesh masril b'gnus u'masayim b'shevach. Some of them start off bad with the degradation and end off in praise. Kamo sina ta'or medanim u'mehem shekulo gnus, and then some of them are entirely degradation. Kamo machase sina sivse sheker u'mosi diba huksiel u'kamo koretz ayin. So he's not telling us what to do with this information, but he is saying that some psukim you will find to be entirely degradation. Now, you could easily read this as a not refutation, but like as an argument on what I was saying, which is that all psukim are opposites. But I think we can be reconciled also yeah, I could agree that this entire pasuk is degradation, but then you still have to figure out, well, what would the chacham do in this case, or what would the tzaddik do? I just think it's cool that he's like talking about this explicitly, because you don't get enough mafarshim who are talking explicitly about methodology. So when you find one, you got to rejoice.
Can I ask on that for a second?
Yeah.
Doesn't that leave for like wild speculation though, if we don't have some foundation of what that opposite is? I'm cool with it. I love that, but
yeah.
I mean, even that, like, there has to. I feel like with that.
So it would be. You're right in that it's having opposites gives us much more narrow parameters to work with. But if it's all degradation, so then the question still is, what is the relationship between the two halves? He's definitely going to say that there is a relationship between the two halves. Otherwise,
that's true.
Yeah.
But what you were saying, like, this whole pasuk is complete degradation. Now we would have to find the opposite of that pasuk, which is, what would a righteous person do?
Yeah.
How do we determine that without Mishlei saying, "Oh, well, this is."
You're saying that's complete speculation. I thought you meant the one that he's saying of the degradation. Yeah. So you're right. Is that it could lend itself to that if you try to figure out the opposite before you understood the pasuk. But if you figure out what this pasuk is talking about, and you figure out, well, what is the mistake here, or what's the error here? So then you think, well, what would someone do if they were not making the error? Or if this is, let's say, an inefficient way to do something, what would be the efficient way to do it? So it's true that opposites can be taken in multiple directions. Like you'd say, for example, like the opposite of cold is hot when you're talking about one phenomenon, but the opposite of cold is warm when you're talking about another phenomenon. So there could be multiple possibilities, but it's a little bit more speculative when you don't have the opposites. But here's the thing: is that let's say you disagree. Let's say we take my approach and we come up with this idea, and then we come up with an opposite. Okay. Even if that opposite is not what Shlomo had in mind, so to speak, it will 100% give clarity to the phenomenon he is talking about. Because comparison of any two things is going to give you insight into this. So that's why I feel like even if we're not confident that he intended to contrast this with this unstated opposite as opposed to that unstated opposite, it still is going to give us more insight from thinking about the opposites. Yeah.
Could I ask a question that has nothing to do with anything? I mean, as a person who is like total emotion, am I wrong to be confused or sidetracked by this feeling of deceit or regret or I'm bothered by it. I'm just bothered by it.
In the pasuk.
Yeah.
So this is okay. So this is
the winking thing. I mean, and anyway, I'm not sure what.
So the question is, what do you do with hunches? Okay, in Mishlei, right? If you have an intuitive hunch that you get a certain impression of something, then do you follow that or not? Okay, And there's no simple answer, right? Because like I think this is a perfect example of the winking, because wink is a very charged term culturally, because we wink for certain reasons, and it's and that might not be what winking signified in Shlomo's time, you know. So we might attach a certain imagery or you know, or association to it, and it might have nothing to do with the pasuk. Or maybe we're picking up on something in the pasuk itself that we just can't put into words right now. For example, the fact that it says that the wink instills atzavis, and atzavis is definitely negative, whether it's sorrow, pain, or trepidation, it's definitely negative. So maybe the impression that we're getting from this is good. So, you know, is accurate, and we should follow it, and it's on the right track. So the best policy is acknowledge your intuition, make sure you know that it is intuition and what you can prove and can't prove, and proceed cautiously, and like be on the lookout for evidence. You know, make sure you're aware of how much stock am I putting into this hunch. Like if my entire interpretation of the pasuk rests on a hunch that I can't prove and have no evidence for, that's going to be weaker and more speculative than an interpretation that is emerging from the entire pasuk, you know? So that's the, I guess those are the general guidelines here. So, but one thing that can help hunches is if we list our questions. So let's get back and list our questions like we always do.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just looked up wink just
Yeah.
in the dictionary, and even though like it generally means now with like some kind of positive, it means closing your eye to give a signal. So
Yeah.
like essentially,
Yeah.
so now there's like a association to positive things by the way that we use it nowadays. But I
Yeah.
just thought that was a more basic
That's good.
definition.
That's why, you know, I think I actually am going to delete the word wink and just say signals with his eye, because I think, first of all, I think that that's actually the pshat, because Mrs. ציון said to move your eye and hint. So it could be a wink, it could be an eye roll, it could be a waggling of the eyebrows, it could be a skeptical, you know, look. Like there are many ways to signal with your eye, and I think the more broad we have it, then you know, the less we'll get trapped into like these specific connotations here. Okay, so let's list that question. Okay.
I have a question which, after, sorry, I didn't realize you weren't it yet.
I was gonna say really quick, if you know the modern Hebrew, is that an approach? Can we say that? Because I know in modern Hebrew, correct, it's pretty much the same as in English, but it's like a deceitful, you know, not necessarily negative, but it's like a hidden secret, you know, like you're trying to give a.
So I'll tell you a story. Okay, which I just posted on Facebook. So when I was preparing for this, I saw in Sadion's commentary. So then again, Sadion's commentary was translated from Arabic into Hebrew. So I looked at, so I usually use my dictionary, my physical dictionary. Oh, so sorry. Sadion had this term that said, he says, his todidus kasha al hachamim. His todidus is difficult for the wise. So I was like, what does his todidus mean? So I have my physical dictionary in the apartment, and I just didn't know where it was. So I lazily looked on Google Translate, which we usually go to modern Hebrew. So this is what Google Translate said. His todidus is cuddling. Okay. And which if you plug that in, it means cuddling is very difficult for the people who are wise, you know? So like, you know, I because modern Hebrew words can be so drastically different from like from, you know, rabbinic Hebrew or whatever, then like you can think about them, but like I'd be very wary about it, like, you know, because they can have completely different meanings. So that's what I would say about modern Hebrew. Yeah. Okay. So Tamara, you were saying you were going to ask a question?
Oh yeah, so I think this is a question and not, oh well, okay, yeah. So when you're translating the pasuk, like should you have an and or a but in between?
Oh yes, good question. Oh, did I not put anything there? I guess I didn't put anything there. And but, because we don't know, right? Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, this is a very difficult pasuk.
Who is the audience that is getting sadness or pain? Is it
Okay,
the person
good.
himself,
is-
who's signaling with his eye? Is he causing pain to himself or to others? Or
Okay, good.
both?
So who is getting experiencing atsaves as a result of this signaling? Yeah. Okay, good. Is it the koretz himself or someone else? And who is that other person? Yeah. Okay, good. What else? What is atsaves?
What is he signaling?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to add that to number 2. What is he signaling and why? Right? Like, why use signaling instead of some other way?
And I guess because it's a different pasuk, what's you love it?
Yeah. So we'll ask all the questions we asked in that pasuk. What is an evil sifasayim, full of the lips? What does yilavet mean? How will the evil sifasayim I'm just trying to think how to say this in English or Hebrew. Experience yilavet. Yeah. Oh, similarly, we didn't ask how does koretz ayin result in yitain atzaves? What's the cause and effect connection? Yeah, I'm going to delete this. I always end up deleting these anyway.
Why does the person who becomes weary / mixed up have a label, like as a fool, but the person who signals with his eye doesn't have a label?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so I'm going to ask that in a slightly different way, which is I'm going to actually put this question up here with the rest of them. Is koretz ayin a type of person, or is it an act? Okay. Meaning the way you framed the question was taking it for granted that it's not a type of person, but maybe it is a type of person, and I feel like the question would be better just on that. Yeah.
Wait, on Leia's question, could you just explain why we would assume that is a person? Because I feel like it's pretty clear that it's an action.
I mean, this is one of the ambiguities in Hebrew, right? Is that like kosev, for example, could be a writer or it could be one who writes, you know? So I'm just trying to keep an open mind for this, you know, like, and you'd be surprised at what is considered to be a personality type. Like, I'm trying to think if there's examples in Mishlei. Like, wait, did Yuri quote something? Hold on, just 1 second here. No, he doesn't have the. Yeah. It's. I'm also inclined to think the way you are, Rifki, but I think we should keep an open mind. Okay.
Wait, also, in
Yeah.
terms of Sadia Gaon's translation, what would be different, assuming that we would take that gam, like assuming we would translate it like he
If it's
does?
also, then it's definitely not but. And I think that's like then he's just saying these are two people who are similar in some way or related in some way. Yeah. So he's taking a stance on that. Here, I think we do need to ask what is the practical application, because especially because of Ayala's question, then who's getting the pain here? I mean, is this telling us not to be a signaler of the eye, or is it telling us to avoid the signaler of the eye? You know, certainly we shouldn't be a fool of the lips, but you know, but I feel like we need some some clear practical guidance that has to emerge from this. Okay, I feel like this is yeah.
I was just kind of inclined to an opposite approach, because I was thinking that the more obvious wrong would be the winking of the eye because you're trying to hide something, but the person who's foolish with the lips doesn't think that he's doing anything wrong.
Yeah. So that is definitely an approach that some of the Mepharshim take, is that the signaling is like a subtle way of doing something, whereas the fool of the lips is clearly like mouthing off, as we say. Yeah. All right. So are we in a good place to start interpreting the pasuk now?
Just question. Can we ask to who is he signaling the eye to, or it's to anyone?
Did we not ask that? I guess we didn't ask that. Why, to whom is he signaling? Yeah. Okay, so where do we start here? I know where Ariel wants to start.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah, sorry, who said something?
I do have a suggestion if we're going
go ahead.
to ideas.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about what it means to signal with the eye as opposed to speak. And I think that, at least off, my first approach of thinking about this, is that it seems like it's a less committed form of communication. Whereas you think something or you want to convey something, but you want to have plausible deniability.
Interesting.
If someone comes at you for having that opinion or for making that suggestion, you'd be like, oh, well, that wasn't exactly what I meant. I meant this. And so by using signals, you're kind of covering your tracks, or keeping a certain amount of ambiguity to what you're trying to convey. Which ultimately will lead to some negative results. It can cause pain to both parties, because let's say you wanted something to happen, they might not have understood it. And so then you failed to accomplish what you tried to do. And also, if you didn't mean something and they thought you totally meant something and they went ahead with it, and you're like, no, I didn't mean that, So I think in that sense, it can cause, a lot of pain and discomfort for both parties, regardless of how they take it. And then I think the second part of the pasuk is saying, but even though one should be clear in their intention, that doesn't mean every single thought you have, you should express immediately. So if you do, just like you have a thought, you say it, you have a thought, a feeling, an idea, you just say everything the moment it comes to your head, then it could lead you to being confused and weary. And I just want to point out that in that situation,
you got muted.
Sorry, just had to decline a call. Is in that situation, like the way I'm looking at that pasuk, being a fool of the lips seems bad, but not as bad. Meaning, like, then you just end up being a bit confused because you were a little bit too easy to say everything you thought, versus the pain that could be caused from someone who's not willing to say specifically what they mean, rather than being cagey about everything they're trying to convey.
Okay, so all right, I like a lot of what you're saying. I want to dissect it though, and break it into just pieces here. Okay, so number one, signaling is definitely a more subtle way to communicate, because the other person has to infer what you're getting at. Okay, now that is the action of signaling. Now you're attaching a motive to that, because of basically your idea in the pasuk, saying that it's less committal and it has plausible deniability. So I just want to acknowledge that, like, we can separate those two ideas, meaning that I think the first half is the most solid. The first part is the most solid part, which is that it's definitely an ambiguous way of communicating that can lead to pain of some sort, even if and that exists independently of your motive. Like maybe you're doing it because you think it's more efficient, and that it is a way to tighten the communication, and like the other person just totally misses the point. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Okay, but then taking what you're saying and saying that the person is trying to have plausible deniability, which is really this is a sign that this is a good idea, because in Mishlei, we have our phenomenon of the Mishleic mida connected mida, the Mishleic measure for measure, which is that the thing that the person is trying to accomplish If he does it in a foolish way, he gets the exact opposite. So he's trying to have.
995
I think Naomi, you're on
723.
unmute right now,
9369.
and you're saying numbers.
That's Ayala.
Oh,
That's
it's Ayala. Oh,
Goodman, all
I couldn't
caps.
tell who it was. Okay, so if I could mute them, I would. Mute all.
Oh, sorry.
Exercising my power. Okay. All right, I just muted everyone. Yeah. All right, sorry, I don't know who that was, but whatever. What was I gonna say? Hopefully I made you can unmute. I think I did. Okay. Anyway,
You were saying that it's a Mishleic idea.
thank you.
that
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you're-
Yeah, that so this person who's trying to have plausible deniability is trying to avoid a consequence, but that very way that they're trying to accomplish it opens the path to more of the consequence he's trying to avoid, which is a a sign of foolishness. Okay, good. So that's a really good first half. Okay, so now let's take the second half. The thing I didn't so I like the opposite being he's going to the other extreme and oversharing, over talking, right? I did not get the interpretation of Ye Love 8 that he's going to be confused or worn out. Can you say that again, or can we all try to work on what would be the that last piece? 'Cause I
Yeah,
think,
so I can offer just a brief attempt, although I didn't
Sure.
think about that as deep as the first part. But
Mhm.
I think that our brains naturally are it's kind of like a communication, right? We'll fire back and forth ideas. So when we're thinking of something, we might think of multiple halves and approach it from different angles before we'd decide what our thought is.
Mhm.
And so if a person is going to be so quick to share everything as it's occurring to them, there's no established thought. So they're all over the place. They're just going to confuse themselves as to what their opinions are and what their thoughts are.
Okay, all right, that makes more sense, right? So that's kind of leading with, okay, so this actually, okay, what I like about this is this fits into the phrase "fool of the lips," in the sense that it's a good term because not only is he foolish in the way he speaks, but his lips actually lead to foolishness. His loose speaking actually corrupts his thought because he remains, okay, now it's good, right? In other words, like this, okay, here's clean opposites, right? Which, and maybe this is what you're saying before, but it's just now clicking, is the guy in the first half of the pasuk is non-committal in speaking, and the guy in the second half is dragged into being committal by his own speech. The fact that he's just, saying stuff and getting it all out on, and people are, because if this was him just talking to himself, it wouldn't cause that much harm. But the fact is people are acting based on what he's saying. Let's say he's the boss of a company, and he says, contradictory things that come from contradictory plans or strategies, and people start acting on it or assembling stuff, then that's going to lock him into problems as well. Yeah. So it really is two opposites then.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, fine. The first half of the pasuk seems it's an action towards someone else, but the second half of the pasuk is really, himself.
No, I think that
seems
I think both of these are talking about communication, and communication does require at least one other party. And so I think it's presuming that once we're talking about communication, then we're talking about how his words are going to have an effect on other people.
Yeah, fine. Maybe I'm just reading the English translation a little too literally, but it says a fool of the lips will become weary. Isn't it?
Yeah, so we're now saying mixed up. And I guess mixed up. See, what I'm wondering now, and I have no idea whether grammatically we have the right to do this. I wonder if it can be read as is that he will cause confusion. In other words, I wonder if it has to be that he is being confused, or if it can mean that he produces it. Let me see if I can look back at where I got that translation from in the first place. I thought it was Sadi Gaon on the previous.
So while you're doing this, I think that, I think you should still check, but I do think that I do think that it does make sense to say that, because I think when you yourself as a person are confused, especially like you were saying, especially when you are in a position of power, by definition, you are going to make other people confused as well. So I think that they do kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah. The only question is, so it's definitely a true point. The only question is it, do the words tolerate it? I'm just looking back in pasuk, because I know I got it from pasuk 8. I'm just trying to see who said it. If I can't find it right now, then we'll abandon it, because I think the idea stands. I think the idea stands without it, because you can still say that he himself will be confused because he's saying stuff and just getting carried away by his own whatever comes to his mind.
So okay, fine. So he'll get confused because of whatever he's saying in his mind, but is that also he's gonna get other people confused, or like just naturally, or I mean like?
Oh, there we go. Sorry, hold on just a second. So this might be where we got it from. Oh, now I'm remembering it, right? Because Yilavit was the Arabic word. Now it's coming back to me. Yilavit was the word that they said came from Arabic. So he says, Yilavit is yitapesh. He will be foolish. He will be foolish with his lips. Oh, it was from Hosea. I remember looking this up and then saying Hosea. Let's see if my memory serves. Hosea 4:14. We got to find the Arabic people, not trees. Was it the Radak? I think it was the Radak. Hold on. Yilabet. There we go. Yakashel, he will stumble. He'll become confused in his mind. So that's he becomes confused with him who blush in Arabi, and it's also in Arabic. Yeah, fine. So I don't know if it can mean that he causes confusion, but let's just say it means that he'll become confused. Sorry, Ariel, I cut you off because I wasn't listening to you. Say it again.
So right. So I guess my question is it still opposites though? Meaning, if he is causing himself confusion on the second half of the pasuk, and the first half of the pasuk is causing other people to be, he's causing trepidation to other people. Is that an opposite? I mean, I get the idea, but I just want to know: is it?
Yeah. So let's define what is the subject. According to this, what is the subject of the pasuk such that these are two opposites, and make sure we see the opposites clearly. Yeah.
I have a question on the second half.
Yeah, let's go, Leslie. Yeah, Leslie.
May I offer a simple possibility?
Is this a new interpretation of the pasuk, or is this helping us work on this one?
It's a simpler idea that encompasses both.
Okay, go ahead.
I just like to say that when you wink with your eye, it's subject to innuendo.
Mm-hmm.
And innuendo always lets the other person fantasize and put their own emotions into what you're trying to say.
Right. Yeah.
So when that happens, you cause sorrow because you have innuendo. You're winking your eye, and the other person who's receiving that message is now putting their own feelings and interpretations into it. And a lot of times people will do things to hurt other people and cause sorrow. But the fool, you see, we always say that when a person speaks, that means that he's already formulated an idea that allows his tongue to operate. So it might be direct what he's saying, what's coming out of his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
But by the very fact that he's forming words, it means that he came out with an idea. So that the guy that's formulating words and making a sentence, he's going to fail because the stuff he's saying is garbage. But he's still not leaving it up to innuendo.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually saying what he means, and he means what he says.
Right.
And he's a fool, and he's going to fail.
Right.
And that's how it's opposite. In one case, he's stating exactly what he means, even though it's garbage. In the other case, he's opening it up for innuendo. And when you open up something for innuendo and a person is receiving this message, a lot of times they'll interpret it and feel bad about it and feel sorrow, because a person interprets a lot of times they make it more destructive than it really was meant to be. It happens all the time.
Right.
People get the wrong. You say something, people get the wrong idea.
Right.
Oh, he turned his back on me. He didn't
Right.
even see you, but he turned his
Right.
back on me. He
Right.
hates me.
Yeah.
He disrespected me.
Right.
Like road rage. A guy
Yeah.
cut somebody off. He didn't see him, and the guy goes bananas, and he wrecks his car because he thinks he's dissing the guy.
Right.
So innuendo is very powerful,
Yeah.
and it's subject to causing sorrow.
Yeah. Okay, good. I like that interpretation. And I think I definitely think there's more to be said. I'm having a really hard time turning my mind away from the idea that we're working on the approach we're working on right now. So I want to see this one through, and then maybe we can come back to that one, because I think there's a lot more to be said in what you're saying, Leslie. In the other voices I heard Tamara and someone else, but I didn't know who the other person was. So let's go with Tamara first.
Okay. Yeah, I have a question on the second half of the pasuk, the way that we're talking about it. I guess I would want some clarification about what exactly the Fool of Lips is doing and how it's causing him to become confused, because I would think that a lot of times talking out your thoughts, even if you're talking them out as you have them, can give you clarity, right? Like, sort of like...
I think when a chacham talks out their thoughts, then it gives clarity. But when the fool talks out their thoughts, since he's just firing from the hip and like speaking about how he feels at the moment or looking at things superficially, there's not going to be a coherence in there, and he's going to be caught up in each individual thing, and it's not going to lead to a cohesive picture or cause him to like one of the characteristics of the Avil also, he's so caught up in the moment that when he's talking and excited about this one thing, the other stuff is not on his mind, whereas like the chacham is constantly trying to like unify and hone, I know that's like a description, but
Okay, so then I guess my question is, what about the speech is making him more confused than if he was just like thinking jumbled up stuff?
So that's where I think the communication thing comes in, is I think that, and maybe this doesn't need to be clarified, because since people are reacting to what he's saying, whether that means acting on it, whether that means responding to his words, whether that means like, any sort of feedback, since he himself is not like, someone can jump in if they need.
I can make a suggestion.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that I think that if we're looking at the... Sorry, every time I start talking, I get a call. But I think that if we're looking at this pasuk as like it's kind of like a manuscript for communication in a way. It's like a person should communicate with intention, and to say with the idea that here's the idea that I'm communicating. Like, I want this to be received, and I'm going to speak and communicate to that end.
Yeah.
And so there's two ways a person can fail to do that. One is by not properly communicating.
Okay, good.
And that's the first failure, and that's what he talks about in the first, first half. In the second half, it's not about failing to communicate, but it's failing to have the proper intention.
Right.
And failing to think,
speaking.
he's talking, he's gone. Like, it's like, but there's a failure to think about what they're trying to convey and how they're going to convey that.
Okay, that's really good. That's very cleanly said. Okay,
I think that could also answer my question, because it doesn't necessarily have to be complete opposites like that.
Yeah, it could be this pasuk is exhausting the a complete subject matter, and the thought in the speech. That's very good, Zach. I like that idea. Yeah.
With that interpretation, I just like have a difficult time understanding how the first half of the pasuk, why it's specifically an I and why it's specifically sadness.
Okay, good. So I don't. So the sadness, the way we're interpreting it right now is, it's going to produce sadness for him, meaning there's gonna be a consequence that is not going to turn out the way he wanted it to be. It is a good question. Like, it is a very specific emotion, and it would be nice if we could get that like clearer, but I'm not bothered by it. Like, I think the interpretation stands on its own. The I think is just an example of subtle communication, and it's just a common way that people do it. But
I actually had a thought on that about the I was thinking about it earlier. I forgot, but maybe I can throw it in. is
Yeah.
that I think that the eye is unique in the sense that, you know, people call the eyes the windows to the soul. And so like there seems to be a tremendous amount of meaning when someone uses their eyes to communicate versus if someone like wiggles their ears, like a lot less
Right.
meaning. Like you're just like, okay, you know, that was funny, you know. And same I think even with smiling, if someone smiles, it's just like generally positive.
Yeah.
But if someone like does something with their eyes, like all of a sudden it's like a whole new level of meaning. I feel like that could be explained more as to why, but I'm just acknowledging that I think that is true.
That's a good point. That is a good point. And that does fit in with, so I think, and it was like this, what I was going to say, and I think they're not mutually exclusive, is it does end up being, this is a broader category than just winking with the eye or signaling with the eye. This would include potentially all forms of subtle communication or nonverbal communication. But as Zach said, like the eye happens to be a very, very good technique that people use. And by the way, not only that, but like maybe this is what you were saying in the Windows of the Soul thing, is like it does work really well when someone gives you like a look and the communication is successful. You could say a lot more with your eye than you can in other ways, but then the it's a double-edged sword because it could backfire in this way, you know. So yeah. I looked through the Mefarshim and I don't think I have someone who says that. Give me 1 second. I just forgot if the Metzudas David says this. Oh, sorry, we're in Hosea. That's not the right sefer of Tanakh. What did he say?
Additionally, I think, sorry, about the eye is I think that when someone signals at you with like, so this might be like an overshare, but like in my family, we actually signal a lot with our noses. It's like, it's a family thing.
Okay.
It's just a thing we do. Yeah. And so like, I think though that when you don't understand like a nose wiggle or something, it's very like, no, there's no skin off the back. It's like, you know, it's like, okay, that was funny. You clearly meant something. I totally didn't understand it, but like, how was I supposed to understand it to begin with? But when someone like looks at you with like a look and like you clearly feel like you should understand, there's like already, before you even get to the results of like what's going to happen from that miscommunication, you already feel pain at not understanding. Like already there's like a discomfort. Just like, why don't I understand? They're like looking at me like they think I should understand. And
right.
Like, yeah.
That's it. I thought you were going to go in a different direction. I hear that also, but like I think the difference is like maybe this is just what you were saying before, and I just am not appreciating it until now, but like the eyes convey emotion, whereas other signals can produce emotion, but they don't convey like emotion. Like you give like a thumbs up, and even if it's a very vigorous thumbs up, like it doesn't actually like convey the emotion. I'm sure there's stuff about how like, wait, is Esty still on? Yeah, Esty, I don't know if you're still there.
Yeah,
but,
I'm here.
Yeah. What's the thing of like, maybe I'm just associating to the wrong thing, about like the reflecting people's faces back at each other, like, and mimicking and like the way people learn emotion.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
sure.
talking about? I know that was really vague.
Because mirror neurons is coming into my head, but that's not it. No, but it's a real thing that people mimic each other's body language. You often find it if you just notice you're agreeing with someone, you'll be in the same positions. I don't remember the name of the phenomenon.
Right, but I feel like a lot of that kind of thing can be conveyed much more through the subtlety of the way that eyes look. I don't know if there's, you know, if it's been scientifically like studied or anything like that, but yeah.
Do you mean mirroring their body language?
Like that was what Esty was saying, but I'm saying that there's something about like if you see someone who has sadness in their eyes, that really conveys that emotion to you in a very powerful way.
Can I take off that thought? Because I agree, and I think that can add maybe another flavor to how we're looking at this, which is that we're used to like our ability to judge a person and to judge something as true or honest often comes from their eyes, you know. So like if someone's wearing really dark sunglasses, you're always like, what's going on, like
Yeah.
you don't really know what page
Or
they're on.
if their zoom cameras off, like just random example. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that a person who then uses their eyes, so to speak, not the way they are naturally. I mean, naturally they just follow how we actually feel and think. But
Yeah.
if they're using them to do like other things, like, oh, I'm gonna like use it to mean this, and then they're taking away a method to see their honesty.
Yeah.
Like now you just see that they're using
Right.
it, and like all of a sudden now it's like it's not like an honest expression. It's like a dishonest expression.
That's interesting.
which
So
takes-
meaning what you're saying is it's not just another tool for communication, but it does continually communicate something that is like undergirding all communication, which is like the directness and the honesty and like the basis of everything. Yeah, that's a good point.
Wait, Rabbi, also
Yeah.
on that point, can we also interpret the pasuk as I know it actually says like signal, like there is an action going on.
Yeah.
But could we also say, because we're talking a lot about eyes, obviously, and I think like with eyes, I don't know why I think eyes, it's not even a funny word. Okay, I'm just gonna
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, but basically, I think like also the actions that we do with our eyes when we're not trying to convey anything, meaning like as I was just thinking like when people are in an interrogation room,
Yeah.
then like classic signs of like lying obviously is like when you don't look at the person or whatever it is. So I
Right.
think that we can also interpret it like that. And I think that also fits with, because it was really bothering me about like the pain and sorrow part, because I
Yeah.
wasn't seeing how they connected. But I think if we read it as also any action done with the eye, even if it's not direct, I think that also it helps understand that with the trepidation and pain aspect.
Are you saying it with the same idea? Like I'm not seeing how
Yeah.
there's. So how is it specifically? I missed that. Sorry. I know that was, yeah.
No, basically, okay, what I'm trying to say is that I think it does. The only thing I'm just not clear on the other like the idea we're talking about is how it transfers pain.
Okay, can I let me actually just, now that we have an idea, let me retranslate Atzaves here,
Mhm.
and I have a biblical basis for this. Creates frustration. Okay,
Mhm.
and that you see from Adam Harishon when he the punishments for Adam is working the land, and he has to let me just get the pasuk here, because we have a computer that can access the verses. So it says, "Ul Adam Amar ki shamat al kol ishtaka v'tocha min eitz asher tzivitzika le'echol lo suchal mimeno blah 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 blah." Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, sorry. Arura ha'adma ba'avuracha. Cursed will be the earth because of you. Be'itzavon tochalena kol yimei chayecha. In itzavon, same word. You will eat it all the days of your life. V'kotz v'dardar tatzmiach lach ve'achalta as esav hasadeh. Thorns and thistles will sprout for you, and you'll eat the grass of the field. It's talking about the state, the emotional experience that he has from needing to work the land really hard in order to get his livelihood. So like frustration, I think, is a word that is that does fit with this, and I think that fits in better with Zach's interpretation here, because it's saying that his efforts to communicate are going to result are going to fail, and that's going to result in some frustration of his plans, some frustration of his feelings, some obstacle. This is a smoother read.
So I think that just clarified my entire idea.
Okay, good.
So I think on another level, not only is it going to create frustration for, both parties involved with the whole communication thing, but just again, talking about like the interrogation aspect, just thinking about that setting, I think because the eyes are so expressive, and because you really can generally tell like what someone is trying to convey for the most part, I think that also is bad for the actual person. Like, let's say if I was being interrogated and then I was spinning this whole story about like an alibi I had, whatever it is, but then you were able to tell, oh, like she's obviously lying because of that. So then that's causing frustration for me, like for the criminal on their side, because of the fact that the eyes are so communicative.
I think I found that more this time, but something is still not clicking in terms of the connection between what you're saying and the idea. I have to think about it some more, but if you think about it, then you can go ahead and let me know. I just wanted, because we don't have a ton of time left, I want to show you one interpretation, which now I think when I first saw it, I thought this was a very particular interpretation. But what I'm wondering is this interpretation just giving a particular example of the phenomenon that we're talking about here, according to Zach's interpretation? So let me show you what it says. Okay, so this is the Rid, Yeshayahu Ditrani, who says at the bottom here, Koretz ayin lanashim, someone who winks his eye at women. Okay, Yitain atzaves will instill whatever you translate. Atzaves says lebale hanashim, for their husbands. Okay, so that's talking about a person who is winking at women, at married women. Okay, and their husbands are not happy about it. Aval mishu evil sefasayim, but someone who is a fool of the lips, shemedaber lahem divrin navala, who speaks words of like vulgarity, to them. I assume like flirtatious vulgarity. Shehu yoser shtus gadol, which is an even more foolish move. Yilaved, he will be. So he says viyuka, he will be beaten by people. Okay. Now, when I first read this, I was like, okay, he's saying this clearly about a specific context. I don't know if he's getting this like from another pasuk or something like that. The pasuk.
It happened to his wife. What do you mean?
Yeah, right. But I think it actually like, it's an example of like the phenomenon we were saying, right? It's like this guy, who is trying to, like, again, I'm not saying that this is teaching the idea that Zach's saying. I'm just trying to see if this is an example of it. This guy who's like winking at these women, like he clearly has one thing in mind that he's trying to accomplish. And if he knew that their husbands were going to take it as like an all out, like, an attempt to flirt with their wives, then he would not do it. In other words, it's because of that like subtlety and ambiguity that he thinks he's doing one thing, and that ambiguity, or I mean, this is really also an example of what Leslie was saying, is that these husbands who are going to now be jealous are going to like fill in all of these like malicious intents that this guy might not have had. Like he might just be like trying to say like, hey, but not actually like hitting on them. And the husbands will think he's doing much more than that, Whereas this Evil Sefasayim clearly can't control himself in terms of actually like the feeling of his desires translating immediately to like inappropriate talk to these women. That's just like total not thinking and just being led by his instinctual speech, So again, it's not the exact idea. And I think Zach's idea is cleaner, but I thought it was an amusing example of that.
It sounds like a different case to me though, because in the case of our pasuk, it seems like there would be an appropriate way to communicate, and the pasuk is telling them the two ways to fail.
Yeah, here you just shouldn't say anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Right. Yeah. Okay. So one thing, just to be clear here, would just to articulate clearly. So what does the chacham do in our case? Is what's the opposite half of the? So each half is an opposite. They're each missing one thing. What does the chacham do? The chacham, it makes sure to know what the contents of his own mind are, like what he wants to say, and then to actually express it in an unambiguous way. That's how you minimize the chances of causing yourself undue frustration or leading to confusion in your own results or in the ramifications of your speech. Yeah.
But isn't that though the contrary to using mishalim? I mean, isn't using a mashal by nature being equivocal and ambiguous?
Turn it on his head. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I should say like this is, if you
could I counter?
Yeah.
Sorry. Is that I think that if you look at it in a different from a different perspective, he's actually following his own advice to the letter, meaning he has in mind exactly what he wants to convey and then figures out how to express that using his words. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't work for us to do in understanding his meaning, but he thought about what he was saying, and he thought about how we were going to take it, and then he planned what he was going to say accordingly. Versus just saying the first thoughts that came to mind, and versus I don't know how one would signal in text. Maybe I guess that maybe there's still a lingering question there.
I think that's what Donnie was saying, is that just like signaling leaves room for ambiguity and misunderstanding, then expressing yourself in cryptic ways or in metaphorical ways also lends itself to that. So here's what I would say is, I would say that there are times when there are communication scenarios where which call for specific types of speech that can lend themselves to additional elements of additional types of misunderstanding. And like, for example, when you are, if you're, again, let's take technical jargon as an example of that. Technical jargon is extremely efficient, but the risk is that if you don't understand it, then there's no way to figure out what's being said, or let's say if you are talking about something that you don't want other people to understand, and you are doing whatever nose wiggling rituals happen in your family to try to keep the outsiders at bay. But so like or actually that'd be another example. Let's say to give two examples. Let's say you're trying to communicate in a way where you're not understood by other people, so you are sacrificing clarity for the sake of this particular purpose. Or let's say you want to create a sense of intimacy with a family member or a friend or a loved one, and you have a certain way of talking that no one else can understand, but it's that secret language that causes you to have feelings of intimacy. So I argue Shlomo is doing a similar thing, is that he's trying to accomplish a bunch of different things in Mishlei, which concise, metaphorical, multifaceted proverbs is the best method of communicating. Is he risking something by that? Yeah. He's risking something by that because you might miss what he's saying or misunderstand what he's saying. But in order to achieve what he wants to achieve, then this is the best way to do it. And if he spoon-fed the ideas, it wouldn't have the same effect. Or if he or he'd have to write a different book, So he's not saying, in other words, he's not saying this is the only way to communicate. That's not what our pasuk is saying. It's not saying it's the only way to communicate. It's saying that when you are using a nonverbal form of communication, then you're running a risk, and sometimes that risk is worth taking if you have a good enough reason to do it.
Can I also add on to what I feel like I didn't complete
Sure.
my thought before, which is that I think that he's also creating a strong divide between words and non-words, meaning I don't think he's saying that you have to be 100% explicit with your words, but using your words is clear that you're not being explicit.
Right.
Meaning if I want to see how someone's doing or catch up on, let's say there's a sensitive issue and I don't want to outright ask, is your dog dead yet? Right. I want to be more sensitive. How's the treatment for your good dog going? I don't know. I'm using a funny example, but I don't think that you always have to be direct with your words, but using words is a level of directness needed to avoid certain pain. And so he might not be saying all of his ideas as directly as he could, but that's not what he's advising against. He's advising against the use of eye signaling, which creates an independent
that's
problem.
a very fair point, and I actually want to just support that. I know we have to stop soon. I want to support this. There are many pasukim in Mishlei that have this, but there is this pasuk in 18:4, which I did earlier in the year. Maim amukim divrei fi ish nachal novea makor chachma. That deep waters are the words of a man's mouth, a flowing river, a wellspring of wisdom. So Rabbeinu Yonah learns this as talking about the words of the wiser you are, then the more depth and content there will be in your words, and it won't be able to be accessed by someone who is not working at trying to bring those waters to the surface. I should clarify, when he says deep waters, he doesn't mean like a deep swimming pool. He means waters that are located at a depth, like at the bottom of a well. So this is one of the features of how Chachamim talk of the wiser you are. Of course, if you're a Chacham, you should be able to be understood by all people. But just because you're trying to incorporate so many ideas into your words, then the listener will have to work much harder to get the full meaning of what you're saying, and that also leaves room for ambiguity. See spot run is a very simple sentence, and like our pasuk is not, but yeah. So I think it's a feature of what Chachamim say, and I agree with Zach that's different than if you did it in like in code, in actual like nonverbal code or like signals. If you just try to communicate it through the eyes, then that's gonna be a harder to get it accurate. Okay, let's stop officially for tonight, and that was a good idea, good applications, and let's plan to pick up next week. And I'll stay on and answer questions if people have them, but I just don't want to hold people hostage.
Cool.
I
So
have a question.
okay, never mind. Sorry, you go first.
Yeah, go ahead, Leah.
I
Or
was just
Ayala.
wondering.
One of the Cohens, yeah.
I'm just wondering if this pasuk is saying that signaling with the eye can never be a positive or neutral thing, or is it just like, because I can think of situations, particularly in parenting, where
Yeah.
using the eye to signal something can be a very good way of communicating with a child without embarrassing them or without,
Right. Yeah, so I don't think it's discouraging the use or saying that it's positive or negative. I think it's just pointing out a pitfall.
So it has a pitfall inherent in it, or it could potentially you could fall into a pitfall. Like is it inherent in? Yeah.
Inherently, it's always going to be less clear than speech. I mean, I don't know how.
With application to parenting, maybe you could say that by understanding there's a pitfall, maybe if that technique is used, it's always important to clarify later what you meant. Meaning, like, you don't just leave it as an eye signal and assume they understood the lesson you were saying, but maybe you're in public, so you just leave it as an eye signal, and then later you have a conversation with that child explaining what you meant. And
yeah, and it could be worked out like in the same way as that, like if I make just a sign with my hand that doesn't mean anything, but in American Sign Language, where you have actual like technical ways to, you're actually making them into a spoken language, really. You can have a certain look or whatever that if you do it consistently, then it becomes like a word, so like I think that's definitely possible. But again, even if that weren't the case, like I think that he's not saying that this is always a bad way to communicate, or that this is negative, or that it's doomed to failure, but it is less clear than speech. Like it is, that's something that's just the fact that you're not using words.
So my question is, I kind of like everything is fine except for the fact that like I don't see in the pasuk how it spells out that giving a signal with your eyes is a bad thing. I only see that the reaction to it is a bad thing.
So again, the new translation here is one who signals with his eye creates frustration, and we're saying that means that because he's going to be misunderstood, or it's going to he's going to be misunderstood. Excuse me, or what Zach was initially saying of like, in case he wants to backtrack or whatever, and then people will like hold him to it. So some his what he intends will not come to fruition, and that'll be frustrating for him. That's the negative. We're saying that you don't want that result.
Right. So it's the result.
It's the result.
Why does the thing itself have to be negative?
It's not, but everything in Mishlei that leads to a negative result is something that, like, nothing is inherently positive or negative, but Mishlei is trying to steer you away from courses of action that lead to consequences. If Yitzchak is winking at Rivka from on the camel, and
she falls off her camel.
Yeah, right. That's like that's winking in a way that like is good. Or if I don't know if there's winking in shiurim in the love poem, but like there's types of winking that are good.
Can I ask a question? Sorry.
Oh yeah, Stephanie, go ahead.
The thing is, I do understand the idea and how they're both different kinds of extremes of like being like too subtle or like not subtle enough. Yeah. But what is the practicality besides saying don't be super subtle, but don't also say everything? Like, okay, great, thanks for the advice.
So I think the practicality stems from why we need the pasuk, which is that I think, and I'm saying this as a human, but also as an English teacher, that like students always think that what they write is clear because in their head it's clear, So I think when people communicate, there's this overvaluation that the other person can read my thoughts, and that could cause a person to gloss over the fact that they're not using an effective communication method, and they're putting a lot of weight on the listener to like infer all the details and stuff, and that's just not right. Like that's just not something that you can expect. So I think it stems much. I think your point, Stephanie, is like it is obvious logically, but we need this because we think that our thoughts are so clear and that our speech is so clear and that like obviously everyone's going to figure out what we're going to say because we want people to do our will. So it's of course it's going to work out the way that I want it to work out.
No, but my question is more like, how do we know the difference in like if we're being too subtle or too obvious besides forgetting the consequences?
So I don't
think
want to
that
be
just
has to be a case by case basis. I think like you have to like, for example, talking to a really, really close friend versus talking to a 5-year-old, you're going to be able to rely on a certain assumption about how much they can like, be on your wave. And so I don't think there's a way to like legislate that or like write out rules.
Oh, so that's why that's why they don't have the chacham part, because since it's so open-ended, is that like you have the two extremes?
Right.
What?
Here are the two pitfalls, but like you got to work it out. I can't.
Like I see like a spectrum from like one opposite to the other, and you need to kind of use your judgment to find your way in the middle. And there's no clear-cut way, so it doesn't really say. It just says what not to do.
That could be, and even if that's not why he doesn't say the chacham, I think that still is the truth. That like I don't think it's possible to give particular parameters, but it is possible to give categorical.
Extremes,
because speech has these two components of your thoughts and your communication, then I think it's possible to say, be wary on those two fronts.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
super cool. Can we compare it to the other pasuk with that same phrase?
I think it ended up being very different, right?
I know. I want to.
Wait, before we compare it, can I just try to clarify what my idea was? Because I don't want to get confused.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I think like it was a little bit different than what Zach's whole theory was.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I know I kept saying like, oh, interrogation, but then
I was wondering if like, is this a personal thing? Like, is there something weighing on you?
No, I think this is the result of just watching too much Criminal Minds. Anyway.
That's also what I thought. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, I think like, I was thinking like an interrogation, someone who would be in that position in the first place. But then I was thinking, I think this can also apply to like any situation that, let's say you're in a fight with someone, or like there's someone that you have to be like trying to convey like what your position is. And if you're not being clear, like if you're, let's say if like you raise an eyebrow or like you roll your eyes and then the other person takes it as like an offense at themselves, that's obviously going to create frustration. And then with the fool of the lips, I think that would have like the same results. So I think like what I was trying to say is just like in any position that you're just not, I guess, being completely straightforward, especially when you're being, I guess like I'm reading this pasuk as the audience is, if you're in a position of like, you need to defend yourself. So I think I was reading it in a more specific way.
That is much clearer than before. I guess my question would be, one of the things I like about Jack's idea is that it is universal and categorical.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. So like, and not that all ideas have to be, but I would want to see some evidence in the pasuk that that like shows that you're talking about that specific application or that narrow of a zone, and maybe you can get it from the atzaves part, like atzaves is a specific term, so but that is a much clearer interpretation of what you're saying. Yeah, it did sound like you're saying another idea, and so that's why my mind kept on getting confused. Ariel, so you wanted to see the other one, right? So the other one was, and I also don't really remember what the idea we said was at this point. Maybe it'll come back to me. We're in 8. Chacham levi kach mitzvos ve'av Yosef Zayin milavet. So I remember one idea we had. I don't remember if this is at what point, is that the Chacham uses mitzvos as tools for development and self-knowledge. So even when he's not obligated in one, then he'll look for opportunities to engage in them. And the fool of the lips is someone who really I think does not relate to the mitzvos as an actual like an actual tools of self-perfection, and therefore he will I don't remember what we said for the second half.
Wait, can you say that the whole pasuk again? Sorry.
The wise of heart will take or seize mitzvos, commandments, and the fool of the lips will become worn out.
I remember it has something to do with like taking advantage of commandments or not.
Yeah. That's the part that was clear to me. I just don't remember what we said for the second half. I thought it had something to do with like that he relates to them in a way where it'll allow him to feel like he's involved in it as long as he's talking about it, but like not actually. Oh, I know what it was. It was we did the Rabbeinu Yonah, who said that the fool of the lips, it's not just that he's overcome with desire, is that he like rationalizes not doing them and like gloats and stuff like that. That it shows that he's not viewing. So in reality, mitzvos are tools for perfecting yourself and they're really for your own benefit. So therefore, like the same way that like the savvy businessman will look out for other opportunities to make money, even when that's not part of his like plan. So too, the chacham will look for opportunities to engage in mitzvos because he knows that they're tools of self-knowledge and self-perfection. Whereas the avil views these, the fool views these as like, and now it's coming back to me. The fool will be foolish with his lips, meaning he's a fool because he relates to mitzvos as like these demands that authority is making upon him, and he doesn't want to be told what to do. So he comes up with a philosophy to justify his neglect of mitzvos. So it's not even like the person who just gives into his desires. It's like, you can't tell me what to do. Like, you can't tell me to put on a mask. Like, this is the land of freedom, like that kind of, like justification, like rationalization, justification. Yeah. So it really does not have to do at all with that, at least that idea. Maybe we came up with several other ones. That idea doesn't have anything at all to do with Yosef Simon or pasuk.
Yeah, very, very different. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think maybe the one overlap though, is it might not be the inherent person that's the same, but they might share characteristics, which is the characteristic of advertising. Meaning like this fool of lips in today's pasuk was just the guy who's like, as soon as they have anything in their mind, it's out there, it's gone. And so like they're just, they're putting it out there immediately. And I think that the person in the other pasuk who basically doesn't value commandments, I think if I remember correctly, we're also saying that they were advertising that. It wasn't just that they were
right.
In that state mentally, but they were so willing to say like, oh no, like no, that's okay, or like expressing their not
okay, good. So that is a commonality. And Ariel, this is like the type of thing that I meant Rabbi Moskowitz was referring to when he said like you learn each one on its own, and then you see, are there common qualities that emerge, and this is why our project that we started working on and never finished was to make the Mishlei lexicon, the Mishlei dictionary, and go through every one of these terms and go through every single pasuk that used a given term, and then come up with unified definition of all of them. And the only one that we did that with, which was recorded, was the one on laziness. We did that with laziness, and those are available on YBT somewhere. We went through all the pasukim about laziness, and then came up with unified definition. We learned each one on its own, and then came up with unified definition for all of them. But yeah.
Right. I mean, it is interesting that like, that it's like you need that second half of the pasuk, otherwise, because it's almost like that second half of the pasuk was really what, pushed us towards a new idea.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, like, if it was just this half of the pasuk, like there was no way we could have. I would have.
And now I think you can appreciate, like, you see how much we would have lost if we just plugged in like the idea from last time, like just blindly,
Like I wasn't married to that idea.
I know, but I'm just like, it's a natural.
I was just winking at it, not.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay. I actually, my recollection, like I said, what I took from
2 weeks ago.
It's
was
possible
the
where we could have said several ideas, like maybe
right.
yeah.
But
Go ahead.
I'm
Leslie,
sure we did. The idea that at least that stuck out to me was the fact that the chacham and the really skilled person or expert in any area is going to start with the basics and follow the derech and the proper
Right.
teaching.
You did say that, yeah.
In order to master it really well, whereas the fool is just going to just spin his wheels constantly and try to not defer to it, not have any deference to learn and properly do it.
Yeah,
and that's going to basically
innovator.
Correct. And it seems here the contrast between that pasuk ches and our pasuk yud is in terms of absorbing, taking, learning versus communicating and giving. Right? It's learning versus teaching, basically learning from, and yet the fool is going to mess up both in terms of whether it's learning how to do something or trying to get someone to do something, whether by teaching or instruction.
Good. That's good. That was a good. I do remember now that idea, and then this does fit in very well. Also,
I like that. I like the side by side, and I think that makes sense. I guess that makes me curious now that we're looking at more the macro view of the psukim. Is how does the middle pasuk fit into it, and why is it broken up?
There was an era with Rabbi Moskowitz where he only learned clusters of psukim. And tried to come up with these like unifying things here. And the question always, in most of Mishlei, there's no paragraph breaks. So you have to like divide up in your mind what you think is the related cluster. And the middle one here, for example, was one who walks with integrity, walks securely, and one who twists his paths will be either broken or will be exposed. That was one we did last week. I'm trying to remember what we said about that. We had 3 interpretations, I remember.
Well, I mean, just a very off the cuff thought that doesn't really bear immediate fruit on the idea level is just that as far as learning and teaching goes, the in-between step is the process of becoming one who could then teach. And like, I remember we kind of mentioned something like the idea of walking is, as a person progresses through life, how they try to get ahead. So that does kind of connect them a bit, but I'm not sure what we can take from that.
Just really quickly, I remember your idea, I remember Stephanie's idea, which is the third and second idea, and I'm sure the first will come to me. Your idea had to do with the taking people, not assuming that they're going to be manipulating you, unless you had reason to assume so, and then they're going to reflect that back to you, and you're not going to have to worry about them cheating you if you do that. Whereas someone who's like this scheming person or whatever is going to it's going to be like a self-fulfilling prophecy, And then Stephanie's idea had to do with deviating from your own principles. That if you stick to your principles and you don't deviate even for a little bit, then that'll keep you on give you a certain momentum of sticking with your principles, and that you'll be secure from that. And then if you start making these little rationalizations, and then that'll cause you to go off the path without realizing it. And then the first idea was, the main idea was, integrity in business will create a reputation, and that reputation will be a shield against certain types of suspicions and assumptions. Whereas if you are like cheating and conniving and lying, then not only will that lead to an exposure, but like that reputation will remain with you and can expose other things as well, something like that. On the surface doesn't seem to be related. Here's a teaser for next week. I got to go now, but teaser for next week. The pasuk says, "Makor chaim pi tzadik upi rashayim yichasei chamas." The source of life is the mouth of a tzaddik, and the mouth of the wicked conceal violence. So that's also about speech. So don't think about it too hard now. We got to save stuff for next time. All righty, this is a good one.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.